Ahoy hoy, I'm Planet Walk and welcome back to the 12 Pseudoscientists of 2024. Pay no attention to the rebrand. Today we're on to Pseudoscientist number 4, who is a Young Earth Creationist who reminds me a bit of Matt Powell. I am talking about Jamie Bambrick. Now, being a Young Earth Creationist is one thing, but it turns out that people like Jamie, Matt, Kent, they seem to be trying to find new and inventive ways of being wrong. And it's hard to find a better way of being wrong than to claim an entire half of the political spectrum is breaking all 10 commandments.
We're going to try and find a way to explicitly break all of God's 10 commandments, but also do so whilst feeling a smug sense of moral superiority. And I have found the perfect vehicle for just such a journey, and that is progressivism / wokeness / leftism / Satanism. Is it Satanism? Pretty darn close, actually, right?
So right off the bat, he's equating progressivism, wokeness, leftism, and Satanism, even though none of those are the same thing. Except for maybe wokeness and one of the other ones. Look, I haven't had anyone define wokeness for me yet. But as for leftism and progressivism, I can understand why someone might think that they're the same thing. A lot of leftists do tend to be progressive. But they don't have to be. Leftism and progressivism are both about achieving equality, so if someone subscribes to one, then they will probably subscribe to the other. But they both come at it from different angles. Progressivism is more about the social aspect, so for example, being pro-gay marriage or being against discrimination. Those would be progressive ideals. Whereas leftism is more focused on economic equality, so this can be being pro-workers' rights or being in favour of social safety nets. Now these can, and often do, go hand in hand, but you do have people that will embrace one but not the other. Like people that will embrace leftism but not progressivism. This usually takes the form of thinking that we need workers' rights, social safety nets, and programs that reduce the cost of things. But thinking that white privilege doesn't exist or that pride has gone too far. So they're two different things, and not only are they two different things, but even within them there are varying ideas. Like some leftists think that we need a completely anarchist society, whereas others might think that we need a decent amount of state control. Now as for Satanism, that is a completely different thing altogether. There are a lot of leftists and progressives that are Christian. I highly doubt that they're also Satanists. Like, when was the last time that you heard of a Christian Satanist? I have never once heard of that.
Number 1. You shall have no other gods before me. Classic commandment, top tier. Right, what about this though? What about if rather than having an all-powerful, all-good, all-knowing God, you had an all-powerful, all-knowing, all-good state?
Okay, so I do not think that it would be a good idea, nor do I think that it would be practical. I do not think that most leftists would think that it's practical either.
And of course, the one thing that we all want our gods to do, we're also going to trust our state to do, which is really just to love us, right? So our states offer us all the things that we want and need. You know, more free porn, more smoking weed, more free stuff. We'll do that for you. Do you want to have a horrible parade with people dressed as furries? Of course you do. You can have that absolutely. Naked bike rides, that's yours. Freedom, liberty, no, we don't do that. You go to jail for that.
Okay, I'm sorry. Did you just suggest that furries being able to have a parade is not freedom and liberty? I mean, if a country has freedom and liberty, you know what you let the furries do? You let them have the parade. They're allowed to do that. They're not harming anyone. You don't have to be a furry to be okay with that. I'm not a furry, and in fact, I'm also not a Santa believer, but you don't see me advocating against Santa parades. Also, free porn is not something that you need a state for. It's something that came free with the internet. Now, if you wanted to get rid of that, let me tell you that you would not be using freedom and liberty to do that. And also, none of those ideals are really leftist things. Like, I've never seen a leftist advocate for government-supplied free porn. And in fact, I think a lot of them wouldn't want that because can you imagine how bad that would be to watch?
If that's the position you put the state in, that is the position of a god. Also, Marxism, very explicitly atheistic. There must be nothing above the state. There is no authority above the state.
What? No, you clearly haven't done 5 seconds of research into Marx, who argues for the abolition of the state. In fact, if you did 5 seconds of research into Marx, you would realise that Marx more or less says that the state is the tool of the bourgeoisie, or the owning class. So you might have to do a little bit more research to get the correct pronunciation of bourgeoisie.
And of course, many people talk about secular states. The reality is there is no such thing as a secular state. Every state has a god, and in a secular system, the state often becomes God.
That's not true at all. You can have a secular state that has little to no power. That state in no way would be God. And also, what if you have a democracy? Doesn't that mean that the people are above the state because they're effectively voting on what the state does? And if you want to talk about the state being viewed as God and that violating the first commandment, then I suggest you take a look at conservatives that treat Donald Trump as a god, which would violate the first commandment. Does that mean that conservatism breaks the first commandment? No, because conservatism doesn't say that you have to treat Donald Trump as a god.
Number 2, you shall not make any graven images. There are a bunch of different ways we could go here as to how we could violate this. We could look at all of the ugly statues we currently have. Medusa on the top of courthouses, the IUD statue recently at the DNC, all the George Floyd murals, the patron saint of irrational public hysteria, all of the pride flags everywhere, all of that symbolism ultimately matters.
Okay, a graven image does not refer to something that you do not like the look of. That is not what it means. It refers to carving, so if you were to carve an image of Jesus out of wood, for example, that would be a graven image. So literally 3 of the examples that you used there were not graven images because they were not carved. And also, carving stuff is not unique to leftism. Right-wingers also carve stuff. They love the Roman statues.
If the state is not the top god, and it probably is, but if it isn't, then the top god of our age is self. We are self-determining, we worship ourselves, and you can choose literally everything about yourself right down to your very gender. And I would say that transgender surgery is probably the deepest form of graven image you can make.
Okay, a few questions here. Firstly, what if someone has breast cancer and needs to get a double mastectomy in order to survive, which is the same surgery that trans men often get? Are they making a graven image? And that's also the same procedure that Frank Turek got, who was born male and developed breasts. He got them removed because he didn't like the look of them. And he's a Christian. Has he broken the second commandment? And what about people that get plastic surgery? There are plenty of people that do get that. Is that also making graven images? Like, why are you singling out transgender surgeries? Could it potentially have anything to do with the fact that a lot of Christians get circumcised?
It is in fact so much worse than carving an image from wood or from stone. You are carving an image of your God, your view of yourself, your gender identity, and carving that into the image of God, the one image that he has given, which is your body. You mutilate yourself. That is so much more precious than any wood or stone.
Okay, so with what you're saying there, circumcision would 100% count, which is often done to babies that absolutely cannot consent to it. That is something that a lot of Christians, especially in the US, practice on their children. I also wonder if he counts piercings, because if he doesn't, then I wonder where the line is.
Number 3, what about taking the Lord's name in vain? When people think about this, they normally think about some form of swearing, using the names of God, which, is true. Don't do that, okay? It's not nice. But let me ask you another question. If you do a whole bunch of things that God hates, and you do so in the name of God or in the name of an idea that belongs to God, is it possible that you're doing this?
Okay, I'm actually going to give him credit here, because a lot of people think that taking the Lord's name in vain is saying something like "God damn it," when that's not really what it means. It more refers to claiming to speak for or on behalf of God, which, I agree that's a bad thing. So let's see how leftism or progressivism supposedly violates this.
Like if, say, as a denomination, you celebrate pride, you give blessings on same-sex marriages, you have transgender priests, the Anglican Church, good job there. Or what about if you take words like justice and peace, which are biblical concepts, but you warp the meaning of those to mean just having sex with anybody you like and race riots? That seems like that would fit that bill. Okay,
that is doing a lot of stretching, and potentially Jamie is also breaking that commandment. He seems to be claiming to know what God hates, i.e. celebrating pride, giving blessings to same-sex marriages and transgender priests. In a sense, he's trying to speak for God, and to people that also believe in God. It's essentially saying that he knows what God wants, whereas these other people who happen to also believe in God do not know what God wants. What gives you the authority, Jamie, to decide what God does and doesn't want? And also, Christianity does not have a monopoly on concepts like justice and peace. Never mind what these concepts are being applied to, or if you're accurately describing what they're being applied to.
Or what about if you're the Pope and you say that communists, who, by the way, have killed millions and millions of people, we'll get to that shortly, but you call those people closet Christians.
What? The Pope isn't leftism or progressivism. If you have a problem with that statement, that is down to your problem with the Pope.
Is any of that stuff, is that taking the Lord's name in vain, or is that just some sort of creative Bible interpretation in the same way that my son bashing his fists on the piano is a creative interpretation of Beethoven?
Yeah, it's a creative interpretation. It was your weakest one of all, and the first one was pretty weak.
Okay, number 4, what about remember the Sabbath to keep it holy? Obviously, there are some people around who still believe that Sunday is the Lord's Day and should be in some way special. I think there's 6 of us currently left in the world, which, let's be honest, is our bad as the church. So obviously the world isn't doing that. But have you noticed that actually we have an extraordinary number of holy days in our society? We have Pride Month, Transgender Awareness Day, all the people who died as a result of white colonialism or something, you know.
Okay, never mind, this might actually be an even weaker point than the last. Because as he pointed out, if we're just talking about working on Sundays, then that was not something I don't think that was caused by leftism. But if you have to point to celebrations in order to make your point, well, I could just point to Christmas, which was initially a pagan holiday, which Christians then co-opted. That sometimes falls on a Sunday. You know, it seems like Christians are the ones breaking all the 10 Commandments here. What about Halloween, a holiday that is mostly practiced in the US, which is a mostly Christian population? What about the 4th of July? All of these days end up falling on a Sunday sometimes.
Pretty much every day there's some sort of left-wing celebration, but you get in trouble if you say Merry Christmas.
No one is getting in trouble for saying Merry Christmas. People just get offended at people saying happy holidays for some reason. And also, Pride isn't necessarily a left-wing celebration. You can celebrate Pride and be right-wing. There are plenty of gay right-wingers.
Okay, number 5, honour thy father and mother. This is, of course, something that we do in our progressive world. We honour our fathers and mothers. We honour them in many ways. For instance, cutting them off, removing them from our lives entirely because they disagreed with our gender identity. When you put on a dress and decided you want to cut off your organs, they said maybe wait a week or two. Very unfair of them.
Okay, Jamie here is showing that he has no idea about how parents sometimes react when their child comes out as transgender. You see, while some parents will have no problem if their kid comes out as trans, some parents will just kick them out of the house. Or in some cases, they might get sent to conversion therapy, which I have been told is absolutely horrible. But here's the thing, we don't just have to talk about trans people here, we could talk about gay people who might have gone through the same kind of thing. Or, get this, we could talk about all the other horrible things kids might have to go through due to bad parents. There are parents who are straight up abusive, there are parents who are manipulative, and there are parents who are neglectful. I do not think that you should have respect for someone that treats you badly, even if it's your parents. This is a commandment which I think in an ideal world, yeah, you should respect your parents, but in the world we live in, there are a lot of parents that do not deserve that respect. I feel like the commandment falls short of recognizing that reality.
A good way to honour them is, of course, to call them bigots and cut them out of your life, absolutely.
I mean, if your parents aren't showing you basic respect, then yeah, maybe you should cut them out of your life. But also, it should be noted that some parents cut their children out of their life and not the other way around because they don't like their child being gay or trans. Again, some parents do not deserve respect.
We also have feminism, which seeks to crush patriarchy. Patriarchy literally means the rule of fathers. Wants to destroy that, so that could be a violation of that.
I mean, not really, it's more the idea that there's a system that has been set up by men in order to try and prioritize men's interests over everyone else's. And also, there are a lot of feminists who will say that this system also negatively impacts a lot of men. The general idea is that if we get rid of that system, then everyone's lives will be made a little bit better. That does not disrespect parents in any way whatsoever. Everyone wants a better life, even your parents.
Also, doesn't have the highest respect for motherhood in the world, doesn't honour that that is the most valuable thing. No, much more important to sit in the cubicle and make widgets for your boss. That is much more important.
I mean, if someone doesn't want to become a mother and instead wants to pursue their own goals, then that's their choice. But Jamie, here's something for you. Around the world, there are a lot of people who don't want kids. And it's not necessarily that they don't want kids, they just can't afford to have kids. So, instead, they work. Would you support some kind of welfare program to help people that want to have kids but can't afford to? Given what you've already said, my guess would be no. So, by your own standards, how is that honouring motherhood or fatherhood? It seems like Jamie, if we apply the same kind of standards that he is applying, is breaking the 10 Commandments.
And of course your forefathers, we don't really speak of them highly. They weren't racist colonial bigots or anything like that either.
Look, it says honour thy mother and father, not thy great-great-great-grandfather. I don't have to honour my great-great-grandfather. I've never even met the dude. That's some other poor sucker that has to do that. Anyway, those are the first 5 commandments that Jamie covered. Not a good start, and I couldn't also cover every single thing that he said because he says a lot of things, and it's like, how do I even respond to some of that stuff? But do let me know if you want a part 2. I'm sure some people are wondering, how does do not murder get violated by the woke agenda? And it also wouldn't surprise me if, by his own standards, Jamie is breaking more of the commandments. But anyway, leave a like and subscribe if you like this video, and leave a comment letting me know who you think the next 2 pseudoscientists will be. Yes, the next one has 2 pseudoscientists because I need to get these out as quick as I can. I do apologise for taking so long. There's a few things that came up and got in the way, but I do hope that we can get back to a decent schedule sometime soon. So I will see you in the next video. Between you and me, thank you for watching.